So hi everyone, I'm Isabel and I'm the Equality and Diversity Manager at Matrix, and I've facilitated this session. The aim of the session is to basically give you the opportunity to hear the experiences of barristers with disabilities. They'll be answering, introducing themselves, answering some questions, and there'll also be the chance for you all to ask your own questions at the end, kind of advice on applying for pupillage, but also when you're actually practicing, advice on any issue you may find. Just a bit about me. I actually had a brain bleed when I was 17, and it gave me epileptic seizures, and I did a graduate diploma in law, started the BPTC, but found it quite difficult to balance the seizures with the BPTC, worked in the disability rights field, and have now kind of moved into Matrix to work in the equality and diversity field, and want to improve the support and provision we give for young, for prospective barristers with disabilities. And a little bit about what we do at Matrix, should you be interested in applying to Matrix. There is a guaranteed interview scheme for trainees. Not everybody who applies will make it, but it's a certain, you get to a certain level of points, and then at that level we invite people with disabilities who apply. There's a space to talk about your experiences on the application form. If you found that your disability has, for example, contributed to you not doing so well in exams as you'd hoped, or if, for example, you feel like it's given you particular life experience you think would help you at the bar, but it may actually, you think, make you more resourceful in some ways. So there's space to talk about that on the application. Trainees are offered occupational health assessments, and we will make reasonable adjustments. So we have had trainees working part-time as well. So I thought the best thing to do would be to allow the speakers to introduce themselves and tell you about their stories. So if we start with Rachel.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone, my name is Rachel Barnes, and I am a criminal practitioner, or I'm in a criminal set. 3 Raymond buildings, as you can see up there. And I'm also qualified in the US. I started off life as a US attorney. You can probably tell from the accent, or rather I hope you can't tell from the accent. But then came to the bar. But my experience is I'm hearing impaired, and have been since I was born. I was born with cleft palate and hearing loss. So wore hearing aids from very young. Had many years of speech therapy. So one of my great lifetime achievements is being able to say the word milk. I'm still really proud of that, and I remember it very clearly. I suppose my experience is, I mean, of course, everyone has a very different experience, and disability isn't one catch-all. But the one thing I would say from growing up is that some people, with the best will in the world, can tell you not to try because they don't want you to fail. And they may say, as I say, with the best of intentions, they care about you, they love you, all the rest of it, but they may not be right, and feel free to ignore that. Certainly that's my experience. From school, actually, from a headmaster who had a hearing impaired child and was very protective of me and told me I should never even think about being a barrister because I'd never be able to cope in a courtroom situation. And luckily I ignored him. So that is really, that in a nutshell, that what I want to say at the moment. I've been very lucky. I was very supported at university and family, and in practice as well, to the extent that I think I have a disability that's not immediately obvious. So people, when they discover that I'm hearing impaired, it's quite easy for them to say, oh wow, you do so brilliantly, and then be very supportive emotionally, perhaps not always practically, because they may say this while looking in a slightly different direction, and when you're trying to lip read, that's not the easiest, but anyway, that I think is probably it in a nutshell from me.
Yeah, Marisa.
Hello everybody, my name's Marisa. I'm a barrister at Doughty Street Chambers and I've been in practice now for about 8 years. I specialise in public law, human rights. I am profoundly deaf. I was born deaf and I have a visual impairment as well. And one of the biggest, I would say there were two sort of big hurdles that I would say, I mean certainly for me in terms of coming to the bar. The first one, and one I would always encourage all kind of would-be applicants to explore, is working out exactly what support will work for you. What support will enable you to practice at the bar. And I found a really good way of exploring that was doing work experience, mini pupillages, and trying different methods of support while doing those. And in terms of funding, I used the disabled student allowance, which was enforced at that time. I'm not sure how accessible that is now. And I also used the Intercourt, which were a fantastic resource in terms of finance. Obviously they do the kind of well-known sort of scholarships, but they will also have kind of more lesser-known awards. And certainly in a temple, I think still have what they call a disability fund, and that had quite a relatively wide reach in terms of students, pupils, spouses. If you end up in a situation where you suddenly need to access a one-off cost, for example, or even regular costs, it's definitely something worth thinking about. But then I identified the speech to text. I'm just going to show you how that works. Which worked like a live transcript, obviously, a bit like subtitles on television. And so when I go to court, I always have a palantypist with me. And similarly, when I am in meetings as well, although I try and avoid those as much as possible. But yes, certainly in court and sometimes client conferences, particularly where you might have an interpreter present as well, I will always make sure I have a palantypist. The second hurdle, I would say, or barrier perhaps, is just that sense of, not being able to see other people like you at the bar and just sort of thinking, can I really do this? And really just having, but I think for me, in identifying the support that I did, seeing how it was going to work, gave me the confidence to almost be able to just sort of ignore that and put that to one side. I'm going to hear from Daniel.
Yeah, my name is Daniel. As you can see on Momo. I get my LB, I get a law degree, acclimate, and then I get an LM. And then I get a few years in disability and LGBT rights. I come from a more campaign background. I'm inclined to campaign. And then like you will be doing, I'm giving a bar course right now. The bar course isn't easy to navigate when you're a disabled person. The bar can be a bit old-fashioned in many ways, and it can be, it's hard to make new changes because he likes to do things in the old ways. So like you, I'm looking at people and I've been round all the roads and you got a lot on offer. And one key issue is inaccessible courts and inaccessible chambers and inflexible working when you're disabled. You might need a bit of flexibility or change how you might need to change the way things are normally done. But another issue is that disabled barristers aren't always visible because we're not defined by our disability barristers. And very good one. So it's not always a visibility that you get when you're a person from an ethnic minority or sexual minority. And obviously we've been a campaign for many, many years to get gender equality in the A rankings of the bar and judiciary. When we talk about diversity at the bar, disability often gets forgotten. So people in what I talk about ethnic minorities, women, LGBT people, people from working class backgrounds, and then again talk about the disabled applicants or persons. That's all for me at the moment, but I'm sure we'll get into key issues in a moment.
Thanks, Daniel. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask is, all of you will have experience of asking for adjustments from when you were doing pupillage, but also from the courts. Do you have any tips on how you approach having that conversation? Bearing in mind people will be applying for pupillage, so thinking about when you should raise it and how.
Shall I start?
Yeah, anyone can jump in. But yeah.
Right, I think the first thing I would say about reasonable adjustments is you may feel anxious about asking for them, and that is perfectly natural. And do not feel you are alone in having that sense of anxiety about it. And I was having this very conversation about 2 weeks ago about asking for adjustments in court. And I was speaking with someone he was a senior circuit judge who is now retired. He is severely deaf, and because and that happened to him later in life, but his courtroom was set up for him so that he could continue to be a judge in those circumstances. And yet nonetheless he now finds he has difficulty, he doesn't like asking for adjustments when he goes to other events, etc. I found this very odd, that here was someone who was a senior circuit judge who says he finds that anxious, and I do as well if I need to ask for an adjustment in court. So first thing, you're not alone if you feel anxious about it. Secondly, please ask, because you're not asking for special treatment, you're asking for equal treatment, so you can participate on an equal playing field, and in pupillage you compete on a level playing field. And people in pupillage want you to succeed, so don't feel that's why they're there. That's why you have a pupillage, you've been given that place in order to show your abilities and to succeed, so don't worry about that. Third point, in terms of the question that's actually asked, I think you need to, it's so individual, you need to think about when and what adjustments you need and be very clear in your own mind about that before you raise it. Because what you need to say to people is, I need this adjustment, and this is practically how you can do it for me. Because the people you are asking probably will not have those experiences and will not be able to find the answer themselves. So how do you go about doing that in terms of who might you ask? At the level of the bar, there's the pupillage advice helpline may be able to give you some advice. Now I haven't used that myself, and it's a long time ago now that I did pupillage, so Marisa is probably better able to speak to that than I am. There is also the bar disability and diversity helpline. They might be worth speaking to because they will have come up against these issues before and have some practical advice. In terms of when you are asking an interview, you will have a contact within the chambers, whoever it is who invited you to interview, The Chambers may, as Matrix has someone like Isabel who you could speak to. All chambers ought to have a equality and diversity officer who is a member of chambers to whom you could speak. If you don't want to raise it with somebody who's involved in the application process. When you're in pupillage and you are coming up against, you think you might need some adjustments you haven't asked for before, there's a range of people I think you could probably speak to. Those I've mentioned before. Also in your the education department, so I'm a member of Grays. Certainly I know the education department there would be horrified if they thought that students couldn't ask them these sorts of questions, and I think we'll have some practical advice to give. It may be putting you in touch with a barrister such as me, such as Marisa, somebody who's actually at the bar at the moment, who could talk things through with you. When you are in pupillage, your pupil supervisor would be the obvious person. I mean, I'm a supervisor. I would be horrified if a pupil of mine thought they couldn't talk to me about something like this. I mean, each chamber is different, but we have supervisors, we have a pupil mentor who's someone outside the supervisee relationship you could talk to, and we have a chambers manager who would be the person who practically would help with that sort of thing. So from my experience, those are the sources. I don't know, Marisa, that would be similar to you, would you have different ones?
Yes, I mean, I think as you say, the important thing is to be clear about, the disability and what support it is that you are asking for, or that you, for example, wish to bring along, whatever it is. But also, perhaps, be clear about whether you're asking them to pay for it, because that's certainly, part of, a reasonable part of the request. Rather than just kind of sort of leave it hanging, perhaps. I think I would just be quite upfront about it myself. And I think, if chambers feel that they're not in a position to be able to fund it, then obviously, you can then think about the end of court, as I said. And then I don't know, is the disabled student allowance still around?
Yes,
it is. Okay. And is it sort of, a sort of reasonable amount, should we say? Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? Is it still pegged to local education authorities, or is it central?
No.
It's central. Okay.
Sorry, no. It depends how you want to pay for the support, but you can, in theory, just have the amount paid to you.
Okay.
Daniel, what about you in terms of kind of physical accessibility to courts and stuff when you've been doing minis? What's been your experience asking for that?
Well, I'll just begin by pointing out that, obviously I don't need to worry about whether or not I come out as disabled because you can see it. And obviously I don't need to think about whether or not I need to ask for reasonable adjustments because I need to check whether or not I will be able to get in the building. So I have to make it quite clear from the beginning. What I do find about requesting reasonable adjustments is it's difficult to figure out what adjustments you might need. If you haven't done the bar course yet, you won't know what a bar course is like, so you might not know what adjustments you will need. If you haven't got pupillage, you might not know what your everyday life on pupillage will be like. So it is really difficult to know at the beginning what support you might need because it might be very situational in what your needs are, but you can try and mitigate against that by networking. You're told from very early on in your legal studies that networking is a big part of coming to a bar, and I think disabled voices are becoming more and more visible. So maybe if you can identify somebody with a similar, like, might have a similar experience here, maybe reach out with an email or ask your in if you're a member coming in, ask them, is there anyone who might be able to mentor me because he is to provide that support to most students. So you can ask your in and reach out to people you can see who are at the bar. And don't be afraid to ask chambers when you're applying. Do you know anyone with my kind of disability? Have you dealt with somebody like me before? That's a question I often ask. Have you had a wheelchair user before? How did they come? How did you accommodate them? And that goes with minis as well.
Yeah, I think
communication is important.
Yeah, I think a good chambers will recognise if you've had trouble getting your reasonable adjustments in place for whatever reason, either because before you just hadn't known that you needed that particular thing, and you can get a pupillage extended, for example, for reasons like that. So if you do struggle a little bit at the start, it's about, like you said, keeping your pupil supervisor informed, so that if when they do come to assess you, maybe you've not done that level of work, or you weren't producing the highest standard at the start because your adjustments weren't in place, they'll take that into account and they can make extensions to pupillage. So that's useful to bear in mind. Do you have any tips on people applying of how they know who would be the disability-friendly chambers? Or would you say apply to any chambers and they should all be disability-friendly? And anyone to answer?
That's my question.
Well, I feel, all chambers ought to be disabled-friendly, and if they're not already, and that's a fault on their part. And it's not always ideal to be the first one, but if you are the first one, you might be able to get them to improve the way they do things, and then the people that follow you will improve on that or have a better experience because you went there and you may get a better place. I wouldn't define what chambers I wanted to be at because of disabled needs, because you want to be at a chambers based on the areas of work you want to do, what kind of atmosphere there is in the chambers, what kind of Marisa is in that kind of chambers. Obviously it might be more practical to work out how disabled friendly they are. But I wouldn't want anyone to be narrow by that.
Do either of you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in principle, it's one should be applying to any chambers regardless of disability. I mean, I just think that has to be right. Having said that, there are inevitably some chambers that are more forward-thinking, if you like, in terms of their approach, and they will be more, they will speak more of the right language, they will have the relevant schemes in place, and they will be perhaps, or think that they are more on top of the sort of approach that should be taken in that regard. And so in some respects that may make things slightly easier, just in the sense that they should have more knowledge when you're speaking to them, for example, about reasonable adjustments. but I don't think it's a given. And I really would just encourage you to apply to a chambers that offers the practice areas that you wish to practice. And that really has to be number one from my perspective.
Yeah, I think I would echo both what Daniel and Marisa said about that, is that, you know, think about the type of lawyer you want to be and the type of law you want to do, and be guided by that. One has to say, practically, there are some chambers which are much more visible in being forward-thinking. I'm at a chambers that probably is not, but it doesn't mean that even though we're not so high profile in terms of being forward-thinking, that actually on the inside we are. So from that experience, I would say that even if, as Daniel says, you're going to be the first, don't let that put you off. Because even if people who are currently at the bar and chambers haven't dealt with people with disabilities before and made reasonable adjustments, it doesn't mean they're not willing to do so. They may just be starting from a position of ignorance, and you can help educate them. And I know that sounds like putting a terrible weight and burden on your shoulders when you're applying for pupillage. I appreciate that, but you know, don't assume that people don't want to help.
I think that's the end of the session then. Thanks to everybody. You were really good.